Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, and my friends, today I'm here to talk about fighting game bosses. Obviously, bosses in fighting games is a signature of the genre. Everyone knows, loves, and hates the cheap fighting game boss. So in this video, it's not so much a test of the character's battle prowess, how hard these bosses are, but rather a test of heart. As pretty much every fighting game boss is some kind of jerk. And fair enough, they're the main antagonist, right? You're there to beat their head in so you can win and feel good about yourself. You saved the day. Most fighting game stories are usually wrapped around the context of a tournament. And at the head of the tournament, the organizer, well, they're just a plain bad guy. They have all sorts of reasons why they're doing what they're doing, why they set up the tournament, but in the end, it's usually for nefarious reasons. And sometimes the person who is the boss maybe isn't the one who set up the tournament, but they're still the boss and they're still a bad guy. How about a few examples here? How about M. Bison? M. Bison set up the Street Fighter tournaments as a way to increase his empire. He is a dictator in a way. So he's here to sell drugs, sell arms to countries, do all sorts of nefarious things to increase his personal power and wealth, and also to increase his mastery of his psycho power. And in the end, M. Bison doesn't want what's good for anybody, except for himself. And in Street Fighter, when it's not Bison, then say someone like Seth, who is hosting the Street Fighter tournament specifically to collect fighting data to improve himself and make him the ultimate being. And this is a running theme, actually, in a lot of fighting games, where there's an artificial construct who's collecting fighting data to become the ultimate being. You're going to see something like that more than a few times, like here with the infamous Alpha 152. Sometimes the goal of the boss is as simple as I'm just here to destroy the world. Sometimes the boss wants to conquer the world, or worlds, in Shao Kahn's case, as he's a threat to the multiverse as a whole. Shao Kahn definitely not a nice guy. And sometimes the fighting game boss is just a plain old freak. They just show up just to mess stuff up. There's no real rhyme or reason. They're just plain weird jerks. Suffice it to say, however you want to look at it, generally a fighting game boss is bad news. And this is why I wanted to make this video, because I want to showcase to you the one fighting game boss who was truly a good guy. No gimmicks, no caveats, just a good guy all around. And for this, we're going to go to the land of the King of Fighters. Now, King of Fighters, perhaps of all fighting game franchises, is most infamous for the bosses, and a lot of them are big-time jerks. Rugal, Orochi, all the weird nests people, those that came from the past. It's certainly just rotten with villains, is King of Fighters. Now, to put it out there, King of Fighters has had bosses and sub-bosses that were not necessarily evil before, like, say, Chizuru. Chizuru is the host of the King of Fighters 96 tournament. However, while she's a good guy in the end, when she was the host of the tournament, she did hold it under duplicitous auspices, as in she was not on the level. The tournament was all a catch. It was specifically to call out Kyo and Team Japan so she could basically force them into her plan to fight Orochi and his crew. So not a bad person, but tournament not held on the level. There was a whole alternative meaning for the tournament. So this is just to head off the one guy who's going to comment, well, what about Chizuru? Now you know. So now that said, let me introduce you to the person who is completely on the level. No tricks, no gimmicks, just wants a good fight and all the people to have a fun time in their martial arts tournament. Let me introduce you to Antonov. So Antonov is the host of the King of Fighters 14, and he was also introduced in the King of Fighters 14. And as he would put it, he is the titular King of Fighters. It's a title he gave himself. He didn't earn it. However, he's a billionaire and he's also funding this whole tournament. So who's to say any different? Now, unlike, say, Shao Kahn, World Destroyer, and Bison, the dictator who sells drugs and arms, your introduction to Antonov, your first real look at the character, is him crying at a sappy movie about a boy and a puppy. This guy is a complete softie. He's not some hard-ass, grim martial artist or some extraterrestrial warrior or anything like that. He's just a regular guy. And he's a regular guy who wants to put on a good show. So he hosts the King of Fighters 14 tournament. And by all means, it seems to be going pretty good. because over 2 billion people are watching the KOF 14 tournament. After KOF 13, there was some issues with a lot of time travelers, mind controlling people, and also history getting wiped a little bit, and it's a whole thing. The KOF brand was damaged, but Antonov has bought the brand out, and now he wants to get 20 billion people watching KOF, which is more people than are currently alive. So it's kind of hard, but the man has passion and he wants to see that go through. You cannot fault him for trying. He's just doing his best. And as a competitor, he has quite a bit of pride. King of Fighters is a team tournament, and he's entering solo. He does not want a team. He will enter by himself, especially because things like fireballs and all that kind of stuff, he doesn't really believe in it. So he figures by himself, he's more than a match for anyone else. And what's his fighting style that he's so confident, you might ask? Well, his fighting style is, he's really big, y'all. Like, really big. As far as the KOF franchise go, he's among the biggest characters to ever be in the games. And admittedly, as far as fighting styles go, being way bigger and way stronger than your opponent is not a bad fighting style, honestly. As far as fighting styles go, it's a pretty decent one. Now, that said, as a boss you have to fight, you will eventually defeat him. That's just how the cookie crumbles. And when you beat him, what happens? Does he try to run away? Does he engage self-destruct or whatever, one last final blow? No. He just congratulates you and offers you the championship belt. Good fight. Now, of course, King of Fighters being King of Fighters, other stuff happens outside of his control, things he definitely didn't plan for or anticipate. And we get this weird, stupid space ghost called Verse. And I'm not really going to go into it. Verse is really dumb, and he's very poorly explained. He was just a vehicle to bring dead characters back to life. And then you got to deal with Verse. But that had nothing to do with Antonov. Antonov, once again, was completely on the level and said basically good match when you beat him. Further proving he's a good guy, when Verse goes crazy trying to take out the audience, he sacrifices himself to save one of the kids. He took a big hit he did not have to. And then once again, very humble, he says, the true champion, that's not me. It's now whoever beats this random monster that just showed up, because that's the King of Fighters way. Now, as fighting games go, the new random bad guy that showed up, of course you beat him. However, Antonov, he's safe and sound, the kid's safe, so he did one last final good act before you win the tournament, and you're the official winner. He gives you the belt, he gives you the prize money, all that stuff. That's it. There's no other context here. That's great. Well, except for the one issue. In King of Fighters, random bad guy showing up and destroying the stadium it's tradition at this point. It's happened so many times. The problem is this is basically KOF 14, the first ever actually legitimate KOF tournament. There's no ulterior motives here. It's an actual straight tournament. So when the crazy monster destroys the arena and all the things around it, Antonov, as president of KOF Corp effectively, is liable for the damages. And going into KOF 15, Antonov is now bankrupt because he got sued. It's all over the news. The whole thing happened, and the worst part of all is everyone thinks Antonov is the one who did it. Verse and the destruction of the stadium, he planned all that like it was wrestling or something like that. Everyone thinks it's fake and that he's a fake and that the whole tournament was a sham from the start. And even though it obviously wasn't, perception is perception, right? So that's about it. Antonov has to resign and he loses all of his money in lawsuits. So how does it all end up for Antonov, the only truly on the level good guy fighting game boss? Well, it ends up with him being penniless and in disgrace. That said, it's not game over for Antonov. He does show up again in 15, and he starts his own wrestling promotion, because if you think he's a big fake, well, geez Louise, why not just go all the way with it, right? You can't keep a good carny down, so maybe the whole King of Fighters thing didn't pan out, and sort of really blew up in his face in a lot of ways, but now wrestling is eternal. And by all accounts that were given, Antonov is actually a really good wrestling promoter. So, sort of works out in the end, I suppose. If you can get 2.5 billion people to watch your King of Fighters tournament, you can probably get enough people to beat out Raw or SmackDown ratings. That's my guess anyways. And my friends, that's the story of Antonov, the only truly good guy boss in fighting games. Now, as a boss, he wasn't the most memorable, especially by like SNK boss syndrome, where you know, they're super cheap. He wasn't that cheap. He's not that hard to beat. But just the fact that he was just a nice guy, just all around pleasant person, that's the actual shocker within the whole context of the genre of fighting games. And that all said, I hope you enjoyed the little bit of story we had to tell today for Antonov. If you'd like, leave a comment on the video, and otherwise, well, I guess we're at the end. So thank you very much for watching, hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some fighting games.